Yep. All right. So my presentation isn't so much on photography, meaning taking the photos. It's about photo editing. Um, Disclaimer, I'm not a photo editing expert by any means. Although, like I said, in preparing the material for this, I learned a lot. This presentation was intended to be kind of a this is what I know and how I make use of it. Very informal thing. It's now a little bit more academic than I planned it. I hope that's okay. Um, the objective is to improve the quality of the photos you take. It starts with taking the photo, but I'm not going to get into that today. So, you can look online or read books and magazines about um, proper setup for the background, lighting, f-stops for depth of field, what angle to shoot it at or what multiple angles to shoot at. I won't go over that, but it certainly helps if you take some care with the initial photograph. The photograph's already taken and you don't like it, you can usually retake it, but it might be that the model's been given away, or you took the picture when it was under construction. You want that under construction picture to be part of your build log, but it needs touching up. Well, you can't go back and take that picture because the model's now progressed, right? So that's what I'm going to go over today, is how to touch up your photographs. You guys build fantastic looking models, and you really owe it to yourselves to have good pictures of those models. Put your model in the best light possible. So I've, over the years, touched up a lot of the photos that have been given to me. And in the back of my mind, I've always thought I'll probably have to do a presentation on this someday. And I should be setting aside the best examples in a folder so I can make a good presentation. But I didn't do that. So I have a few samples for later in the presentation. I wish I had better ones, so forgive me for that. Now the first question is, what program should I use? Well, it doesn't really matter. What I'm going to present today applies to every program. Photoshop is the flagship that everyone's heard of, but it costs $23 a month now. The subscription fee that all the programs are moving toward. Instead of buying it for $150, you have to pay them $150 every year. There is a open source free program called GIMP that I've heard quite a bit about. I looked at it briefly several years back. I can't remember why I dismissed it, but it's a very popular one. There's some that work directly online. You don't have to download a program, but you're also not loading your photographs up onto their website, so there's no privacy concerns. Everything runs locally on your machine. But again, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna really recommend one program over the other, because what I'm going over is the controls that will exist in all of these programs. So pick whatever you want, whatever one you want.
Hey, Greg.
Yep.
Can I make a quick recommendation on one?
Sure.
Adobe Lightroom. It's for photographers. You don't have all that other stuff that you do in the regular Photoshop. So look into Lightroom. It's a lot easier. It's not in depth, and you can do just about everything except layers and all that stuff these guys will never need to do.
Right.
I'm done.
Yeah. No problem. And I probably, one of the first things I should have said was that Tim should probably be doing this presentation. He didn't volunteer. He's going to know a lot more about it than me, and you can correct me where I make a mistake, Tim.
No, and anybody can ask me any questions anytime they want.
Yeah. Okay, and so the program I'm going to use is called Faststone, and I don't remember why I chose it over the others. Certainly one aspect was that it's free. Another is that it has a fairly easy to use batch processing command. So if you want to reduce the resolution for viewing on the internet, 50 pictures at once, you can do that through this program. But it has all the same controls that are in Photoshop, which is what my wife has on her computer, and so they were familiar to me. So I'm going to be referencing Faststone. It's not a bad program at all. I recommend you look at it, but I'm not recommending it over anything else. So I'm going to talk a little bit about color models, which was not one of my initial intents, but I think if we go over this technical stuff, you'll get a better understanding of what the easy to use little slider controls are doing. And if you understand what they're doing, you might make better use of them. So show of hands, who in the room's familiar with, the concept of RGB, red, blue, green, okay, and CMYK? Yeah. No, not so much. Okay. So RGB is what they call additive color model. You create colors by adding red, blue, and green together, and it applies to when you are emitting colors. Like, so a computer screen like what we're looking at is actually throwing the photons at you in those wavelengths. And if you combine red, blue, and green at 100% luminosity, you get white. If you take it all away, you get black. And if you mix them up, you get the different colors. And one tool to help demonstrate that is W3 School's RGB calculator. So here I've got red turned all the way up and blue and green are turned all the way down. So it looks red. If I move everything into the middle, if I move it, yep, it's going to look gray. And if I do like two colors at once, like blue and green, it'll look cyan. Okay. So the other model, so this 255, if you're wondering what 255 is, why 255, it's the ones and zeros in a computer. So they're storing the data in a series of 8 digits, 1 byte. Everyone's heard of bytes. So ones and zeros. Kaylin, you didn't know you were getting a math lesson today. Base 10 counting system, it's 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. In base 2, every time you add a 0 at the end, you're multiplying by 2. So 0 in base 2 is 0 in base 10, 1 is 1, 10 is 2, 100 is 4, 1,000 is 8. You can see it's going up. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, so on. If you've got 8 bits available to you and they're all ones, it's 255. That's basically the end of the scale. All right. So 100% luminosity, 100% brightness is 255 and 0 is 0. Fair enough. How is it different than paints? Paints use the subtractive color model. So if you get a can of paint and look at the label, they've added together pigments that are cyan, yellow, magenta, which in theory would be enough, but because the pigments aren't perfect, they have to include black to get a true black. So the K is actually black. They don't use B for black because it would be confused with blue. So K, CYMK. But that applies to paints, and this isn't a lecture about painting, so that's all I have to say about that. I found this video pretty enlightening. The guy speaks in a bit of a pedantic fashion, but the information's really solid and it's kind of cool. So you can look. I'm not going to take the time to show it now, but I threw it up on the shop note page so you can get to it later.
Is the link up there?
This is a YouTube. You just click on it. It's a live link. So. Yep. So hue, saturation, and brightness, the abbreviations HSB. You also see B listed as value instead, so it might be HSV. There's different terms for it. But this is the technical stuff I wasn't going to go over before, but I am now. The source of all truth in a digital photograph is this histogram. And basically what it's saying is, well, there's 4 different channels. There's all of them combined. So that's just the sum of all the parts. And then individually for the red, the green, and the blue. And what this chart is saying is how many pixels you have that are 100% luminosity, how many are at 0, and for each level in between, how many pixels are there. This gamma thing in the middle, I'll talk about later. So we'll just ignore that for now. So what can you tell from looking at this right away? Well, there's nothing that's full brightness. So this image must be a little bit muted overall.
Drag it to the right.
And what was that, an acknowledgement or?
I'm sorry. I was just thinking out loud. I'm going to turn my audio off. I'm sorry.
You're welcome. Like I said, Tim's the expert. So, and the big spike, off to the middle means that on average, although it's not super bright, it's going to be, on the brighter side of medium gray. And this relatively consistent bit to the left means there's not a lot of shadow, but at least it's consistent. It's not going to go, there's going to be some variation in the grays that you see. So yes, I picked 75% intensity and said, okay, this is the number of pixels at 75%. So now that we hopefully have an understanding of that, what are we going to do with that information? Well, before I move on to that, this is the combined channel. And I said there's channels for separate red, green, and blue. So to illustrate what it looked like if you just had a pure color, this is pure red. There's no blue or green, but those blue and greens are still counted as zeros. So they're still 1/3 of all the information. So you can see that there's a spike that goes from all the way to the full height of the graph, saying there's this much at 0% luminosity, and that represents the blue and the green portions. And then there's this much at 100% luminosity. It doesn't go to the top, even though everything is red. It's not 100% of the photograph because we're counting the zeros as well. So 1/3 of the total is fully bright. So there's basically, if this was a 20 by 20 image, there's 400 pixels. Each of those pixels has a red, green, and blue component. So we've got 1,200 pieces of information. So this is 400, that's 400, this is 400. So this is the same. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that means there's basically each place there could be a color. There's 2 pixels aren't firing and 1 is. That's why you have 1/3.
I don't know the physics of how it works at the mechanical level, but each pixel is capable of having each of those colors. So if you thought in the modern LED sense, you have these color changing LEDs, it's still one emitter. But somehow they get those colors combined out of that one light bulb. So think of a pixel as a changing LED light bulb. It might not be a physically correct way of looking at it, but a functionally correct way of looking at it. This is the same image that we were looking at above in the red, green, and blue channels. You can see they're all very similar. You would expect them to be if the colors are balanced, but they're not exactly the same. So there's a bit more green and blue in the shadows, because this is a bit higher. So since these things are balanced or look more or less the same, we can say that the colors in this image are relatively balanced, but they're a bit muted because there's a 0 up here in the brighter areas. So what do we do about that? These histograms that we're looking at are found in what's called the levels command control for the program. And I'll open up the program and show you how that means. So I'll admit I artificially added the red cast to this photo. And I said at the beginning that I had good examples for every photo editing control in the program that I've encountered over the years, but I didn't save them, put them aside. And then I thought it would be easy to go find them again, and it wasn't. So I had to artificially create this one. This is Jack Bobbitt, a former late member of the club. His model, the Wild Goose, and I made it look pink. Sorry, Jack. Like I said, the program I'm using is Faststone. I have it set up to be my default when I open a picture. And when it opens it up full screen. And the menus are kind of hidden. So if you move your cursor up to the top, you get a pop-up menu that shows everything else in the folder. I'm not going to go through all the commands in here. It would take too long. The one I will point out is, besides being able to minimize and close, those are important. This one, which takes you out of the full screen and into normal program mode, whatever you want to call it. And if you double click on the image, then you get back into full screen. And if you move your cursor over to the right, you'll get information about the photograph. It's taken with a Sony CyberShot, exposure time of 1 second, pretty long. It must have been on a stand, tripod, ISO, all that stuff if you're a photo nerd. Down below, saving it, looking at the previous or next file, zooming in and out, that kind of stuff. Again, just if you want to use this program, just fiddle with it or look at the documentation or get online and Google it. It's too much to go over today. Everything we need to talk about is on the left-hand menu. So we're starting with the levels, adjust levels, and that'll bring up the histogram that I was just showing you. So again, you can see those in the room probably at a disadvantage compared to the people online because the projector doesn't give you the same depth of color. I hope the demonstration will be, I hope the changes I make will be visible on this screen. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
All right. So I presume you'd all agree that this picture, although it doesn't look bad, is a bit washed out. And that is what I was saying earlier about there too much being up here at the high end of the brightness level. If we look at the individual channels, you can see the reds are really bright. If we move to green and blue, the brightest greens and blues are further left. So there's more bright red than there is bright green and bright blue. Levels control lets you change that. So if you take this slider and move it in, what is the brightest blue, what you're saying is if the brightest blue was 90%, that's now going to be bumped up to 100%. And everything in between is going to move up kind of in a linear stretched fashion. And now I go to green channel and I do the same thing. Now the 90% greens are 100, the 85s or 87s, and the 50s or 52, whatever, it gets stretched out. I have a graph to show that later. But what it did was it balanced out the greens and blues relative to the red and got rid of that pink cast. This is really easy tool. This is usually the first thing I do with a photograph. And it's amazing. You think the photograph looks good because the histogram looks close to ideal as it is. But if you even maybe it goes from 5% to 95%, and it's relatively evenly distributed. You think, that picture looks fine. If you go ahead and take the time to make that 5% correction at each end, you'd be surprised how noticeable the difference can be. So it's worth doing to almost every picture. I do get lazy and sometimes skip it and say good enough, but that's when I'm doing 50 photos of somebody else's models. If it's you and it's your model, maybe you're willing to take more time. Okay, so where was I? Come on now.
Are you able to put two pictures up at once and compare them side by side?
Sorry. Yes.
See what the before and after.
Yes. Sorry. I intended to show that and I forgot. Thank you for bringing that up. So this is stretched to fit the screen. You can click on this button to get full 1-to-1, and you can click this button to get side by side. So we'll go through this again real quick. There. Now you can see the difference side by side. Thank you, John.
See my mistakes.
Okay. So this is what I just went over live. So I made this as a shop note and put it up on our website so that you can refer to it. That was better than handing out notes. I think, yeah. Okay. So levels is like, so there are slider adjustments that are the quick, easy, everyday adjustments. Levels is the elevated, higher control, more precise, but that's like 101. The really powerful tool is curves. Levels was doing a linear adjustment. I said how it was stretching things out. So in that picture, it was really like between 5 and 90%, but in this graph, I made it 10 to 90% to make the math easier when I was planning to do this as a table with numbers, and I decided to use a chart instead. But like basically, I said everything that was when the darkest pixel was 10% luminosity and the lightest was 90, and I moved those in basically at each end. Now it goes from 0 to 100, and all of the colors in between get adjusted relatively. So you see, it didn't make any change in the middle at all, and on either side of the middle, the changes are fairly slight, and out at the ends are most extreme. That may or may not be the best solution. So a lot of you are familiar with splines and ducts for drafting, or you may have played around with a drafting tool that lets you draw a B-spline and you can move the control points and all. It's analogous to that. So let me open up the same picture in curves instead of levels. So curves is also on this left-hand menu, and instead of adjust levels, it's adjust curves. It's levels was adjusting luminosity in a linear fashion. This one lets you do it varying amount across the field. So the closest, I don't know that it's exactly the same, but the closest thing to levels would be taking, go to the red channel where it's too high and dragging this top point down along the y-axis. So I can't bump up the blue and the green with this because you can see they're already up at the very top. So instead of increasing the brightness of the blue and the green, I'm instead lowering the amount of red. It's effectively the same thing. And I'm taking away the brightness of the red makes the overall image a little bit darker, whereas with levels, bumping up the blue and the green made the image overall brighter. It's going to depend on your picture whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. You know, if your picture is too bright to begin with, then you wouldn't want to be doing that. So the curves would be a better thing.
Well, does that allow you to bring stuff out of the shadows by just working at one end of the spectrum?
Yep, it does, and I'm gonna go over that. No, it's quite all right. As long as the detail's there. right? So if you took your picture in a very dark room and it's underexposed, and I think I have an example of that later too. It won't do magic, but it'll do some things. So that's what these curves do. So this looks a bit yellow or something after having pulled that down. So I can move this so it's a nonlinear curve, or is it green? I guess it's a bit green. If I pull it down, it starts to look green. Where it was here still looks a little bit odd to me. If I move this back, the whites look more balanced. So this is the nonlinear adjustment I was talking about. And I don't know exactly where to pick and where to drag. I kind of do it trial and error. I don't have anything better for you there. But there are some general helpful things. This is where I really needed some better examples to start with. So I think I'm going to have to just show the different methods without necessarily having the best example photograph for that method. So if you want to increase your highlights and bring stuff out of the shadows and not affect the middle of it very much, you can just drag the high end, brighten the highlights a little bit, and then lower the dark end to bring out some of the shadows, and you see your mid-range is not much affected.
Now
You
you're
put
getting
the end point to the right,
The
or
end
is it pegged
here?
on the left lower corner?
Yep.
Yep.
No, yeah. But then what you're doing here, if I move this here, I'm saying everything that was, let's put it in the middle. So that's about 12.5% luminosity. Everything that was anywhere between 0 and 12.5% is now going to be 0. So I'm taking out some of the detail if I do that.
So you put it in the upper right.
Yeah. So if you leave that there and move it, if you want to lighten your shadows, bring out some of the detail, you drag this down. If you want to lighten it, you'd move it up. If I want more contrast, give it a little pop, then I'm actually going to darken it. I'm going to not do it by forcing a whole group of things all the way to 0. It's going to be more of a gradual shift. If I want to leave everything else alone, and by the way, you add a control point. Different programs will have different mouse and menu commands. In this one, you add a point by clicking on the line, and you remove it by right-clicking on the point. So I just did a right-click on that, and it went away. I can drag up here to brighten the highlights, but it also affected everything in the middle. So I can drag again and pull that range back. It's still a curve, like you're using a spline. Unlike a ship hull, I don't care if it's fair, so I can force this back so that nothing's affected at all except for up here at the top. I can maybe ease the transition a little bit by moving that a smaller amount. So I brought out the highlights here. So that's called a highlight recovery is the term. I can do the same thing at the opposite end by lifting the shadows. So bring out some more detail in the shadows, but without affecting the mid-range. I can pull this back in. Or I can darken the shadows by pulling that down. If I'm in that, let's see, now I'm not remembering the other commands. Let's see, we did highlight recovery, we did shadow lift, we did the S curve is basically contrast boost, right? It darkened the darks, I lightened the lights, but I didn't touch what was in the middle. Mid-tone lift. So if you think your blacks are where you want them to be and your whites are where you want them to be, but stuff in the middle looks a bit muted, then let's do you can just drag it up in the middle. So your biggest changes are in the mid-range and you haven't made much change at either end. And if I want to restrict which portion in the middle, then I can just add some more points. And it's trial and error, whatever you think best. So this one, I had this as an example for some reason. Let's start just with the levels. Not a bad looking photograph to begin with, but you see there's a little bit of data here at the very end. If I throw that away, you're not going to make it. You're not going to notice it. I'm going to pull that in, get rid of whatever true reds were there, and make that true red. Pull that in a little bit. I never make these adjustments on the RGB channel, always on the color ones. Because if you do it here, it's affecting everything the same. And you want to make different adjustments to each color. And I move that in just a bit. So this was already a decent looking photograph, but the colors are noticeably richer after making those slight changes. And the whites aren't quite as blown out. A little bit more texture in the whites than was there before. So if you are in this full screen view, you can click and hold on this button to see the before and after at a bigger scale.
Yeah, better results with different printers.
Printers?
Yeah.
I haven't done a whole lot of printing.
Inkjet versus.
I haven't done a lot of paper printing, so I can't comment on that. Okay. So the mid-tone lift, so at the beginning, showing in the levels, there is this gamma correction that I glossed over. Gamma correction is essentially that mid-tone lift that I just demonstrated with curves, except for that instead of just randomly dragging at a certain point, there's a mathematical formula for what that curve adjustment will look like. So that's what gamma is doing. If you slide it one way or the other, it's going to go above or beyond the diagonal line. And you see it's making, better hurry up, I'm going to run out of battery. It's making more drastic changes at the dark end than it is the light end. You see this is shifts bigger than that one. So having gone through all this technical stuff, now you know what the gamma slider is actually doing rather than just playing with it. All right, so any questions about curves? Now we'll dumb it down and just go into the slider controls and then tell you how they relate to what's been discussed so far. So highlight slider, I use this other than levels more than anything else. I use the levels for the color correction and overall brightness. And then I come back and use the highlights to adjust the brighter end, because in more photos than not, things are a bit overexposed. So that's a hint for when you're taking your photographs. I said I wasn't going to go into the photography part of it, but given that almost every picture I see, including my own, are a bit overexposed, if your camera has an adjustment for exposure, take it down to like -1. Underexposed by 1 stop is usually a good idea. But you can play around with that.
Question.
Mhm.
Believe a camera is better than an iPhone?
iPhones are awesome. The more pictures I take with my iPhone, the happier I am with it. I've stopped using my camera to a large extent. iPhones, I don't know, but I have a very strong, somewhat educated guess. iPhone's probably taking a whole bunch of pictures. There used to be something called HDR mode, where it would take a whole bunch of pictures and even things out. I think they've just incorporated that. It's automated. It's not even a choice anymore. So you don't have to hold your camera as still, because it's going to take all those pictures, and even if there's some camera shake, it's combining them, centering them, recentering them to get a better, more evenly exposed image without any camera shake, blur, or whatever. But there are some limitations. It's harder for me to control the depth of field. There's ways to control depth of field with iPhone or any other smartphone, but it's a bit more difficult.
Hey, Greg.
Yep.
Hey, Greg. For people that might be interested, there was an NRG workshop, and you guys as a club can access that. But there was an NRG workshop on how to take ship model photographs with a cell phone.
Awesome.
Okay, so that I haven't seen it, but that might answer, some of the questions that you may have on it.
Yep. Yeah, my direct answer to Dave, my short answer to Dave is that I usually rely on my iPhone now more than my camera. I still find cases where my camera is useful, especially in challenging situations or if I want to really control depth of field more freely. But yeah, those smartphones are awesome.
Why there are 3 lenses
Could be. I don't.
combined 3 different, slightly different angles.
I don't know if it's. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. And the single one.
It could be. It could also be like my previous iPhone. I have a 16 now, and it has true photographic 5x zoom, whereas the previous one was 2, and the one before that didn't have it at all. You do go into digital zoom, you're just losing pixels, so don't really want to do that. It could be that those extra lenses are to help with the larger zoom, but without relying on a mechanical means or as much of a mechanical means, because cell phone has to be relatively thin. There's not a whole lot they can do with telescoping lenses. Yeah. Okay, so back to the controls. Shadows before. Yeah. Okay. Come on now. Let's quickly readjust the blue and the green there. Okay, I'm going to say okay. So now I've balanced out the color, but it's still too light. But I don't want to darken the hull. I don't want to make this black and have no texture or shading. So that's where in curves, I would have just gone up to the upper right and lowered the line a little bit to lighten the highlights. But if you want to do it with sliders instead, go to the adjust lighting. And this highlight slider is a simplified version of that. It works very well. It targets in on the highlighted areas and leaves everything else unaffected, and you don't have to concern yourself with where to pick or how much to drag. Use the slider unless you think it doesn't give you good enough results, and then rely on the curves after that. So you can be fairly aggressive with this. I can take this down to -40, and you see I haven't touched this at all. And now there's noticeably more Let me zoom in. If I hold down on this, I see what it looked like before. You see how washed out that looks. Notice, like especially right around the signs that say Wild Goose and the canopy over the pilot house window, look very washed out. And with that adjustment, it looks much more even. And the same thing with shadows is the opposite end. So this is what you were asking about, bringing out detail in the shadows. This is so underexposed. There's only so much I can do with this one. If you look at the levels, you can see a huge spike at the bottom end, nothing in the middle. And then the bright highlights are the white background. So nothing in the middle, bright background, really solid hull. You can fix this a little, but only so much. Yep, that was it. So heat back to where we were on adjust lighting, the slider for, okay, don't be confused. This part is a screen capture picture. It's not the controls. Controls are down here. Shadows is right above highlights, so I can bump up the shadows. I don't want to go too much. With the less information you have, you make a big change, it's going to start looking grainy and fake. So with this one being challenging, I'm not going to bump it up as much. But you can see I didn't really gain anything in the hull because the detail is just not there. But look down here below the waterline where that was really heavily in shadow. Now it looks a lot better there. Yeah, and the beakhead. Originally, there looked very flat in here, almost like it was one solid piece. You can't see the head rails very well. Now they pop out a little bit more. So better original photograph, you could do more, but it's still an improvement. Contrast is like that gentle S-curve where you're either, if you're wanting more contrast in curves, you raised at the upper right and lowered. If you wanted to reduce the contrast, you would lower the upper right and raise the lower left. That's what this slider is doing. And smaller changes make a bigger difference here, I think. So here I want, well, it's not going to be a very good example because this picture is not. Come on. Yeah. Let's use this one as an example. Just lighting. Okay, so I'd say probably not enough contrast in this one, so I'm going to bump it up a bit. I don't use contrast as much as the others. Adjusting the colors and levels and adjusting the highlights and the shadows is usually all I need to do. But as long as it's here, we'll talk about it. So I guess you can be more aggressive than I thought. This is the effect. This is the equivalent of that S-curve and curves. And what it did was, since I'm increasing contrast, it brightened the whites and darkened the darks. You can see the difference. It looks less washed out. And it didn't change much in the middle. Saturation. I need to remind myself what saturation is. I never use it, so I had to look it up last night. So if I didn't use it, you probably won't need to either, but I was going to use Dave's. Did I not have? Oh, I'm supposed to have his photo. That was a good example for shadows, but I lost it. Oh, well. All right, so when I asked ChatGPT to describe saturation for me, it said that when you do that shadow lifting, increase the light at the dark end, it can make things look a little bit muddy. And increasing the saturation can bring back some natural color and help you distinguish between the blacks and the browns. So if you do a shadow lift and the color looks a little odd, you could try playing around with the saturation. You want to jump in here, Tim? Nope, he went.
I always use just a little bit of saturation.
Yeah.
You can really overdo it, and then your eye will tell you. But
and that's
a little really helps. What it does is it richens the colors, makes them more rich. And because time after time when you're editing stuff, the pixels don't always duplicate the exact same, just like real photography. You print it, and you copy it, you lose. So that actually what a saturation does, it'll bring some of that stuff back.
That kind of goes along with the answer that the internet gave me about restoring something to your blacks and browns when you did the shadow lift. And that's the same note that I made. Tim just said only a little bit. I found that more than even a small change made it look very artificial. And that could probably be a fun tool if you're doing something artistic. But as ship modelers, we're trying to make things look real. So
yeah, if you're using nature photography and things like that, that's a tool we go to a lot. But like you said, looking for ship model photography and things like that, stills, just less is better, but just a little, always just a little to perk it up.
I've seen far too many nature photographs that had clearly oversaturated because they just don't look real anymore. Yeah. Like I've been to that lake on a nice sunny day and it didn't look that good.
No.
That kind of thing.
And getting real quick, gamma, Greg, is that's a measure of your contrast. If you want to do that in your sliders, you can, or in your tools deeper in like you were using. But what gamma is, it's the measurement of contrast, and contrast is the straight line portion of your S curve. That's what gamma is.
Okay. So brightness is just basically adding luminosity across the entire range evenly. And if you can quickly blow out the high end or totally blacken the low end with anything more than a slight adjustment. The only time I ever use it is if the whole picture is clearly over or underexposed and everything needs to be shifted. But you can get the same effect with the other controls, so I hardly ever touch this. Tim just described gamma. That's contrast. It's the same part, the S curve portion. And then red, green, and blue, there are slight, I needed to go back to the program to show you where these are. So under adjust lighting, we covered these four. Right below adjust lighting is adjust colors. And that's where we find brightness, contrast, and gamma, and the red, green, and blue. I never use these because I'm getting the same thing with, I shouldn't say never. If I want to avoid curves for some reason, after doing the levels, you might still have a little bit of a red tinge, for instance. So I might come in here and lower the red just a little bit. But overall, I'm getting most of my color correction in the levels or curves, but you can use these sliders if you want as well. Hue is shifting it to a completely different color. So your reds will shift towards blue and your blues will shift towards green. That's another artistic kind of thing that you're not going to need to mess with. Saturation, two of these controls are duplicated. I think contrast and saturation were also on the lighting one. Saturation, contrast, yeah. So that covers all the color correction. Now we're on to backgrounds. This is the trickiest part, and I guess I didn't mention AI at the beginning. I asked Kevin if there's even any point to me doing this presentation, because now you can just ask some AI agent to fix your photograph for you. And he encouraged me to do it anyway, and it helps to know what the AI agent is doing. And the other thing is that, at least for now, what you can get done by an AI agent for free is fairly limited. Like, they'll let you do 2 or 3 pictures a day, and the pictures they do for you are reduced in resolution, and they have a watermark on them, or at least ChatGPT puts a little watermark on it. So I guess it's still relevant. So we went over lighting and color corrections. Now we're into fixing what's wrong with the scene itself. So in this picture, I took this at a meeting. There's some sort of strap here and a pile of something over there. The quickest and easiest thing you can do is just crop those things out. And you're going to be making compromises on what's left of the image. In order to crop this out, I'm going to lose part of the ship model itself, but that might be acceptable. So there's the same picture. I just cropped it. Now you're focused completely on the model, and you don't have these distracting things in the background. I lost the end of the boom, but it's still better for it. If cropping's not enough, a very powerful tool is clone and stamp. Basically what that does is allows you to take a portion of the picture and paste it somewhere else, but it doesn't paste it at 100%. It kind of blends in a little bit. So you can move one portion of the picture and drag it into the other for kind of a seamless approach. I'm going to open up, I think this is Hank's model. Hank here today? No? Okay. I couldn't tell if this was a piece of cardboard in the background or just a very narrow, there's a corner here and a corner there. So if that's a wall, it's a very small cubby. Might be on a shelf of something. Or it could be a piece of paper. I can't tell. But you can see this hard edge here and here is quite distracting. So the clone and stamp tool is here. And what it does is you see this circle. And I'm going to zoom out. Or you can increase and decrease the size of the circle with the middle mouse wheel or with this control here. And I said it blends things in. The degree to how much it blends is controlled by this. I don't know where it should be. I don't remember if that's the default or if I changed it. If you hold, in this program, if you hold the control key down, then your middle mouse will zoom in and out instead of changing the circle size. So generally, I use the biggest circle I can because it'll blend easier that way. But if you need to get into some tight area, you're going to have to use a smaller circle. So how this works is you generally want your source, what you're copying, to be close to where you're going to paste it, because that will blend the colors better. If I picked over here and then pasted over there, there's going to be a drastic sudden change. So wherever the circle is where you're copying. You hold the control key and click, and now you've locked that in. You move it over, you can see it's copying that, but it hasn't done anything until I click again. Once I click, then it's locked in that offset. So you can see if I click every click from now on is going to copy the same relative distance. So if I copied an inch to the left the first time, each subsequent click is going to be an inch to the left of where my cursor is. So I can just keep clicking and blend all that in, and I can click and drag. So I can just clicking and drag. So you see, this is no good because the top of my source has some of that gray in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control again to get a new reference point. And this time when I click, I'm going to move a little bit up to the left. So now every time I click, it's a little bit down to the left of where my mouse is. It's in the area I want to copy from has a pure color. So now when I click and drag, it's just filling all that in. I can get up into the corners. Now if I want to go off to the right, I need to change my source again. So I'll click Control again and move to the upper right instead of the upper left. And now I have a different form of reference. And I can do that until everything is blended. Something important to note is it's darker down here and lighter up here. So if I were to keep copying downward, like so, eventually I'd be dragging this light stuff, copying it into the darker area, and eventually I'm going to get to the point where I've created another hard edge. So that's no good. So it's better to take note of where your shading is in the picture. It's darker at the bottom and lighter in the top. So when I do my copying, I'm going to go left and right instead of up and down.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you change the saturation like you can in Photoshop with this?
Not in this tool, but elsewhere in the tool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because Photoshop, while you're doing this, you can change the saturation.
Oh, okay.
And your pixels, you can blend it a lot easier.
Okay. I don't know. Saturation is in color saturation, or is that the hardness that we're talking about?
They're calling it saturation, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it could be the hardness in this.
So if I bump this, just experiment. I haven't played with this. If I take it up to 100, I think I'm going to get hard edges.
Probably.
So if I as my source, it's not blended at all. It's very much like a circle.
Yeah.
If I take it way down to 0.1, it's probably going to look very feathered edge. Yes. So when it's very light like that, it's going to blend in more, but it's going to make it actually working better than I thought. What I feared was going to happen was it was going to end up leaving some of the background in place. But it's probably the fact that I'm continuously dragging it. If I do individual clicks with that low, you can see I'm leaving stuff in the middle because there's more, there's less saturation as what you're calling it, or less hardness on the outside. But if I continually click and drag, then it's going to work better.
Yeah, same thing happened.
Yep. So this is great for small corrections, but it's going to be. Can you imagine how hard it would be in here to try and get rid of that line? I'm going to have to decrease my circle size for one. And it's going to be really hard to avoid each one of these rigging lines. So that's where I would move to AI for something like this, if I could. And I'll show you. I will show you. Oh, did I not? Oh, it's on the on here. Oh, I thought it was a clickable image. It's not. Anyway, I said Chat GPT. This is I don't know. For certain things, it definitely helps to give it some context. I don't know if it needed it in this case, but I said, this is a model of the ship taken in front of a piece of white cardboard. There are hard edges visible. Get rid of the edges and make the cardboard appear as if it extended to the left and right and top of the image. And within seconds, it came back with that. And so that is a lot nicer picture than the one that had the ceiling visible and the lines going through the middle of the model. But it reduced the resolution. I don't remember how much, but by at least 30%. Which means you can't zoom in as much, and it put this watermark in there. But I can get rid of the watermark pretty easily with my clone stamp tool. I just put my circle here, copied, and then popped it over the watermark to get rid of it.
Hey, Greg?
Yep.
I got a test for your AI when you get home tonight. Ask it if it'll get rid of the shadows behind the rigging.
Oh, yeah, good idea. Good idea.
Because that's really distracting. If it does that or gets rid of power lines and things like that, that's a very good tool.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Thanks. So one more example of manual clone and stamp, not the AI stuff. This is Dave's model of Hannah. Is that right? Taken at the National IPMS show, and
Fix the rigging?
can I fix the problem with this photo is the edge of the table, the model case next to it, and this post in the background. So using that cropping to begin with, which is the first thing I mentioned, and then following the clone and stamp, I cropped out the model case to the left, but I couldn't crop everything to the right, model case to the right. I couldn't crop everything onto the left. That edge of the table is still visible in here, but I used the clone and stamp tool to just move the tablecloth over. And then this is where the post was. I just copied this and pasted it together. You're hard pressed to tell that that's not just part of the concrete floor.
Oil spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's already blotchy as it is. So, I
Good
recently
job.
had. Any questions?
You said Apple too. Faststone is free?
Yep.
Software?
Mm-hmm.
Is it stored on their side?
You download it. Yeah.
We've gotten more scams on the internet.
No, it's not been bundled with any malware, freeware, whatever that I can tell. So it's a pretty easy thing.
Very good math lesson. Awesome.
So there's the site. It's so this is the one I'm using, Image Viewer. And I have one called Capture, which is a one-time purchase of like $30 or something, and it's a more powerful tool. One thing I occasionally wish I could do in Faststone is just a plain fill, solid color fill. That doesn't exist. But I have another tool that does it, so I bounce between the two. Faststone Capture has that and probably more, but like I said, it's not free. And then these are stripped down versions of the Image Viewer. So you probably don't even want to look at those. But this is the one right here, Faststone Image Viewer.
Okay, Greg?
Not free.
Yep.
You need.
If there's anybody out there that wants to use like Photoshop
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't want to pay the money for it, Affinity Photo does everything Photoshop does and it's free.
Infinity?
Affinity, AFFINITY Photo.
Okay. So that was
What does not free mean? Is it like $600 or is it $20?
the Faststone Capture.
Slider on it.
This one it's probably like $20, but or between 20 and 30, but it doesn't do any automatic updates. So if you want a new version, you're probably paying the $30 again.
So it's not
But-
like AutoCAD.
No,
It's $600 a year.
no, it's a one-time purchase, but without updates. So there are some plugins for our website that are kind of like that. I let them expire, and I wait until something stops working, and then I buy it again. So I might buy it once every 5 years or something like that.
Or they send you a deal.
Yeah. So I'm not saying Faststone is. I'm not comparing it at all to Photoshop or Affinity or GIMP or whatever. Like I said, I can't remember why I picked it, but so far it's done everything I needed it to do. So take it or try different ones and see what suits you. I think one thing about Faststone that I liked was that the menus were less complicated than some others that I looked at. I mean, there was just stuff all over the place, and I couldn't find what I wanted. Here, maybe because it was more similar to what I used in the past. If I'd started with one of those others, it may have been more intuitive, but this was more similar to what I'd used in the past. So it was quicker for me to find things. And I liked how the menus are split into 4 regions. So if I am in my view here, I don't have to see, like in some of the other ones, the menus just had buttons almost over the entire screen. Here, I move to the left and I get just a portion of it. I move to the top and I get a different portion. I move to the right, I get a different portion, and so on. I kind of like that minimal interface thing.
Rick, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for putting that together.
Thank you.
People
just gotta
want some
make a
great
model
models
picture.
that want